Let's now look at the command pattern in action. We will have a look at an application that leverages an existing implementation of the command pattern. And then, of course, we will make sure that we can leverage the shopping cart commands that we introduced in the previous demo to allow us to not only leverage an existing command pattern implementation, but also combine that with our own. We're in Visual Studio 2019 again, and we're looking at pretty much the same solution. I've added one new project called the shoppingcart.windows. So this will be a WPF application. And the existing implementation of the command pattern will be leveraging the commands inside WPF. And then inside our shopping cart business layer, we have added two new commands. We have one called remove from cart command, as well as remove all from cart command. So let's just have a look at those implementations. The remove from cart command will simply grab the line item from our shopping cart repository, increase the stock available in our store, and then remove all the items added to our shopping cart. What's interesting here is that you'll notice that I haven't implemented the undo logic. The reason for that is because the command itself doesn't know how many items at this point was added to our shopping cart. We could, of course, grab the line item.quantity here, store that inside our command, and then for an undo, we could add the same amount into our shopping cart. But you can play around with that yourself. The next command that I've added is remove all from cart. Of course, what this is going to do is that it's going to grab all our line items from our shopping cart. We'll then iterate over all of these items. We'll increase the stock again, and then we'll do pretty much the same thing that we did in our remove from cart command. We have these two new commands that will allow us to interact even more with our shopping cart. And again, the specific implementation of our shopping cart repository isn't really relevant to this demo. It's simply just allowing us to work with the products in the shopping cart. So now let's have a look at our shopping cart Windows application. This project is a simple WPF application. We've defined the actions and some of the content that we want inside our views using something called a view model. And then we bind this to our UI to allow us to have a separation of concerns. So for instance, we have something called the shopping cart view model. The view model contains all the information that we need in order for us to display the information and interact with our particular view. This here has a reference to our shopping cart as well as our products. We have two commands called remove all from cart as well as the checkout command. Then we have two collections. We have the products as well as the line items. So the products is all the available products in our store. The line items are all the products that we have currently added to our cart. And this pattern is very common when you're working with things like WPF, Xamarin, or back in the day, even Silverlight. Now, at a first glance, you'll notice that the I command that we leverage here is coming from system.windows.input. And if we have a look at this I command interface, you'll see that it has two things that we are very familiar with. It's the execute method as well as can execute. And remember earlier I said that some implementations leverages a parameter passed to the execute and can execute method. We won't be using that in this course, but you can play around with that yourself. And then there's this event handler that tells us if can execute has changed. So this here is very UI specific, which is the reason for not using this in our business layer. So how do we combine this with our existing implementation of our concrete commands? Well, the way that we do that is by introducing a concrete implementation for a command inside our WPF application. I call this the relay command. It's a relay that allows us to execute something which we pass as an action to the constructor of our relay command, as well as doing the same thing for can execute. So the implementation for our relay command is very simple. We simply have our can execute as well as our execute method, which simply call the corresponding actions and functions inside our concrete relay command. And then we can use this together with our existing concrete implementations of commands that we have in our business layer. In this case here, I set up a remove all from cart command with a reference to our shopping cart and product repository. And then inside our relay command, whenever that relay command is executed, what I do is that I execute my remove all from cart command, as well as making sure that I refresh our UI. Again, this here shows that I wouldn't want to have all of this logic inside my concrete implementation that lives in a layer that's not UI specific. So leveraging something like a relay command in this case is a really nice way for us to combining something that works across different types of projects, like our implementation of the command and the command manager, with something like the command pattern implementation in WPF. Also notice here that I'm not in fact using our command manager. So I'm directly communicating with the commands because right now I don't want any undo functionality or keeping track of which order the commands were executed in. Of course, we could introduce a command manager and use that as well, but you can play around with that yourself. So now how do we use this inside our UI? Although this isn't a course on how to build WPF applications, let's just simply have a quick look at how we leverage this command inside our application. Inside our WPF application, you can see that I have two buttons here, which simply references to commands inside my view model. It references the remove all from cart command as well as our checkout command. So far, we haven't seen the add to cart or change quantity commands. Those live inside our product view model. So we have our I command from system.windows.input for both the add to cart, increase quantity, decrease quantity, as well as our remove from cart command. But again, these are only relay commands. So what we do here is that we set up our add to cart command, the increase and decrease quantity commands, as well as our remove from cart command. These are all the concrete implementations that live inside our business layer. And then we leverage the relay commands to execute and check if these commands can be executed or not. And running this application will allow us to add products to the cart. And you'll notice here how it automatically simply disables the button whenever the can execute method returns false, because we cannot add more products to our shopping cart if the stock has run out. And you'll notice here if I remove one of these items, it'll allow us to add it back to the cart again. And if we add 5 Shure SM7Bs, you'll see that the total price is the same as we had earlier in our console application. Under the hoods, WPF will leverage a command manager. It will make sure that whenever you press the button, it'll execute one of these commands. This here gives you an idea of an existing implementation in the real world. It illustrates how we can leverage the relay command together with our own command pattern implementation inside our applications. Again, one of the drawbacks of using the command pattern is that it does add another layer in our applications. But now we have a complete separation of our UI, our view model, as well as the command that's being executed. The goal is, of course, to have maintainable solutions. And what's interesting here is that if you want to introduce new functionality in your application, you can simply introduce a new command without breaking existing implementations, which of course is extremely important when building applications for our users. We want to make sure that we can extend the applications without breaking things along the way. So now you've seen not only how to implement the command pattern, but you've also seen how this is used in existing implementations like WPF, as well as how you can leverage an existing implementation with your custom implementation of a command pattern. I urge you to try and introduce the command manager in WPF and introduce an undo button in your application, and maybe even do a redo button. So go ahead and play around with the command pattern and extend it to your liking.